So my thanks for everyone for taking part. I'm going to, before I introduce the speakers, I'm going to invite our partner, the GRULA in Ottawa. President of GRULA is the ambassador from Uruguay, His Excellency Martin Vidal. Over to you.
Muchas gracias, Jean-Jacques. Good morning, bonjour, buenos días para algunos.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of GRULA, which is the Latin American group of embassies in Canada, in Ottawa, I would like to welcome all of you and to thank you for participating in this event on the opportunities and challenges of the Canadian wine and spirits market. I would like to thank the wonderful team of IICA in Ottawa for their tremendous work in organizing this webinar. In particular, its director, Jean-Georges Levalet, that ever since he took office, he's constantly looking for opportunities to connect Latin America and the Caribbean with Canada around this shared regional asset that identifies us, and we're talking about agriculture production. I would like to highlight the efficient and coordinated work of our colleagues, which are engaged in promoting agriculture and commercial topics in the embassies of Latin American countries in Ottawa. I hope this is the first of a series of events where GRULA and IICA join forces to strengthen the links between Latin America and Canada in relation to agricultural topics. We decided to start with wines and spirits for three fundamental reasons. Number one is because we all like them. Make no mistake. But now, more seriously speaking, we selected this industry because Canada is a major market, ranked among the first countries in the world, probably ranked 10th, and also because it's a highly regulated market with certain complexities that we need to take into account because it can make access to markets difficult, especially for SMEs. So in order to better understand this, we will have a wonderful panel of speakers today that will allow us to better understand how the Canadian market operates, or let's say Canadian markets, as you will see, given that Canadian provinces are autonomous in regulating this industry. And we will listen to the first-hand experience of many speakers who have traveled this path. So we would like to acknowledge producers and companies because we have an official representation of our country abroad, and we're using the products that you manufacture, that you produce, as a letter of presentation. So our countries can be recognized and acknowledged. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Martin. Great opener. And to give a sense, maybe briefly to listeners about the size of the Canadian market, you heard Martin talk about it's a major market. It is. It's in terms of like monthly sales, we're talking about $2 billion in terms of beer, wine, liquor stores in Canada. And if you look at consumption annually, I know my colleagues will be speaking to this, but just to give you like to nibble, it's per capita alcoholic beverages in Canada is about $775. So that's enormous per capita. In terms of consumption, it's about 100 liters overall. And like beer would be 70-ish, and then you've got wine at like about 17, and the spirits is about 6. So it gives you a big picture. And I think that we can start off with wine. And we are going to have Danielle speak first. Danielle Giroux is the director for California Wines Canada. And then we'll follow up with a video from Susana Valvo from Argentina. Over to you, Danielle.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much for the invitation, for the opportunity to speak to your membership. This is I'm really quite honored. I'm going to start out with a presentation and hopefully find some enlightenment in this crazy market we have here in Canada, which is basically, I think it was noted, several other markets in itself based on the regions that we have. So let me just change my display. Okay, the wine market in Canada. I'm just going to start out with just giving a bit of background of who is the California Wine Institute and what do we do. So the California Wine Institute was founded in 1934 in California, just after Prohibition. Its role really in the US is about advocacy, policy, compliance, and support for the 5,900 wineries that exist in California. The export program was developed to help spur growth and development of California wines throughout the world, international policy and marketing. And I think it's important to note that California, the state of California, is actually the 4th largest wine producer in the world. So here's a state that is larger than some other wine countries in itself. We have about over 1.3 billion in wine exports globally. And we support over 170 wineries that are exporting to about 120 countries. And there are, similar to myself, I'm a trade representative working on behalf of the California Wine Institute to promote and grow the love for California wines in Canada. And there are others like me throughout the globe. So I really want to just put California wines out. We're on a mission. I think this is really important. And I just want to highlight our efforts towards sustainability and our current goal towards carbon zero by 2045 for the state of California. But we have about 250 kilohectares or 620,000 acres of vineyard in California, wine grapes in California, of which 50% are certified sustainable. And I just want to put that in relative terms. That is larger than the total acres of wine grapes found in countries like Portugal, Australia, Argentina, Chile, and South Africa. So just for some perspective of how significant this is relative to the wine regions of the world. And more than 80% of what's produced in California is produced in a certified sustainable winery. So agriculture, ag as we call it, is very key for us on our road to carbon zero by 2045. So this is near and dear to our hearts and something that we want to demonstrate leadership in the world for and really have this be an integral part of what we do and how we do it in the market. So without further ado, the wine market in Canada. Let me help set the stage for what this is all about. So if you think about Canada, we're about 37.5 million people. And of those 37.5 million people, that's about the size of California. So if you look at our population base for all of our country is equivalent to the population base in California. And of those 37.5 million people, we're about 160 kilometers away from our border. So we kind of hug the US border with our population as well. So just to give you a bit of perspective. What do we drink? What's our beverage landscape look like? We consume beer. We're a beer drinking nation, but that's been dropping, and that's been dropping dramatically year after year after year. And I think Jan will attune to this as well. So we're really shifting our beverage alcohol of choice away from beer, even though it is the dominant share of what we consume. And wine, in terms of the segment, is the next largest in size. But if you take a look at our stellar share of segment, we're at 40.9 share is what wine derives from Canada. So it's an important segment. And I think also to note, it's growing. We're growing in terms of value. And what I'll point out there is that indicates a premiumization of the category. So where volume is relatively flat to declining, we're seeing that our value keeps on increasing. And that's really important. Spirits is growing, so it's another category that Jen will be talking about. But the one that's been a phenomenon here and also in the US is what we call ready to drink or coolers. These are seltzers that are low alcohol and low in sugar. And they've actually just dominated our marketplace for the last 3 or 4 years. We're seeing this year that they're stagnating a bit. So that's some good news for the rest of our categories. But it is a segment that if you're interested in is growing quite dramatically here. And you'll see why later in some of the trends that are happening in our marketplace. So why invest in Canada? Why come to Canada with your wine? Well, we drink more alcohol than the global average. So I think that was alluded to. We like to consume beverage alcohol. In particular, we're number 3 after Australia and New Zealand on our per capita basis. So that's one reason. What does the wine market look like? So I always like to take a look at by share of country of origin. So who is dominating and where are we in respect to the various countries that are actually importing into Canada. So we do have a domestic wine market in Canada, and that Canadian market does dominate the share with a 22% hold on the marketplace. France would be next at about 16.8, followed by wines from US at 15.5. And I'll point out this is revenue share. So this is the value share owned by those categories. Italy is next at 15.4, followed by Australia, Spain, Chile, New Zealand, etc. So what does it look like by market? So we had alluded to this earlier, is that each of our distinct provinces have their very distinct way of going to market, predominantly dominated by a liquor control board or a monopoly system. So let's start out in the East Coast. So again, 53.5 million 9-liter cases of table wine sold in Canada nationally. Quebec, which is highlighted in turquoise, is about 8.5 million people living in Quebec, but they represent 36% of all wine sales throughout the country, 18 million 9-liter cases. That's significant. So they are dominating and the dominant player in the marketplace with that kind of share. But it's a monopoly, a liquor monopoly called the SAQ. And those liquor monopolies have very stringent requirements on how you bring your brands to market, how you can actually get a listing with them and sell through their channel. It's quite challenging, but we'll talk about how you can break through and succeed in the wine market in Quebec in particular with some slides later on. So that's our most significant market is Quebec. And then in the darker blue is Ontario with 14 million people, dominant of population, but it represents 30% of wine sales and 15 million 9-liter cases. So that market is also run and controlled by the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. So it's a liquor monopoly. They have about 700 stores that they are running. And so you think about that a listing in one of those stores could be quite significant in terms of volume. But getting there, that's the hard part. It really, truly is. We also have a new opportunity in Ontario through our grocery channel. So grocery just opened up about 5-6 years ago now, and it's still developing in our marketplace, but is relatively a new way to expose wine, beer to the marketplace, coolers and ciders. Spirits, unfortunately, are not currently permitted to be sold in the beverage alcohol channel of grocery in Ontario. Then I'm going to take us way to the other side of the country and head to the West Coast to our beautiful British Columbia with 5 million people. That province represents 16% of total wine sales and about 7.9 million 9-liter cases. And what's significant about British Columbia is we call this our hybrid model. So it still has a liquor monopoly, which is a government run or controlled beverage alcohol sales retailer. They also manage our cannabis stores. That's legal there as well. But there's a hybrid model which also has private retailers. So we're starting to see a number of private retailers develop here. We're seeing private chains, and we're seeing that the British Columbia liquor stores, which still are the dominant player, are starting to lose share to that other marketplace. So it's an interesting place to think about doing business because of the significance of how much sales are there, and also that it has this opportunity in a new retail model, which is private plus the government run. Then we move into Alberta. So this is our Wild West province. They have been privatized 100% for many, many years, since the early 90s. 4.3 million people and 8% of wine sales, with 4.2 million 9-liter cases of wine sold in that province. So this is 100% very similar to the US model, where it's privately run retailers. It's very easy to move into this marketplace, find a distributor, sell your wine, and have it placed on shelf. This would be, I would consider, one of the easiest markets to kind of dip your feet into and gain a better understanding of how to go to market in this region. But why I've highlighted these four is these four regions are 91% of sales. So if you think about where do you want to put your efforts and energy, I would highly recommend considering British Columbia, Alberta, focus on the Western region, or commit to Ontario and Quebec. We'll talk about how you would do that in a little bit later. So what do we consume? So in the wine market, we like to take this apart and take a look at it by color. And 9-liter trends is always what we look at. We dominate in red. So 50% of what is sold in Canada is red wine. Then followed by white at 37.5 share. Rosé, but what's to note about rosé is that that is a category that has just been on fire in Canada and growing tremendously, as well as sparkling. So sparkling and rosé have been our little darlings. We have seen a dramatic increase in growth in both those categories over time. But you can just see the size of the prize again, whereas red dominating at 27 million cases, white at 20 million, rosé at 3, and sparkling at 2.4. So again, where do you want to operate? Where do you want to put your efforts and energy in the marketplace? export market planning. So I always think about, you want to come to Canada, what should you do? What are some basics? Well, the first is really you need a go-to-market strategy. Be clear on what your strategy is. Do your homework, do some pricing, some competitor analysis, take a look at volume objectives that you have. How much are you prepared to invest? It is a substantial investment in the marketplace that's required, particularly with our liquor monopolies. So getting a listing is golden. Retaining that listing and supporting that product is really a fundamental piece that you need to consider. Then I would say get an agent. What is an agent? So an agent in Canada is like a distributor. This is somebody who you would rely on to help you with that strategy, to help you navigate through all the provincial markets and all the various regulations. That's what they do. That's what they're hired for. They represent your wines and your brands in this marketplace, and they have that partnership and understanding of what it means and what you need to do to work with that liquor boards. They'll help you through that minefield and help you weed through all of the regulations and everything you need to do, from labeling and packaging to submitting a listing to all the requirements on getting your product into market. That's really what they're all about. And quite frankly, most liquor boards in Canada will not meet you unless you have an agent. It's really fundamental to doing business here. What they also have is field representation in each of the markets, and they'll help you drive growth if it's on premise or in retail, depending on that strategy that you have. So if you're entering the market, consider, are you small volume luxury, or are you really looking to drive large volume brands? What is your go-to-market strategy? And then you need to find an agent that fits with that. So who best would fit with your desired strategies in the marketplace? Who are your competitors? What are your goals? And how do you plan on achieving them? The agent's there to help you do that. If I could say anything, that would be the first and only thing you should do, is find an agent to help you determine the marketplace. Then I like to talk about trends. So what was happening in our marketplace in wine, just to help you kind of understand what we're all about. And pre-COVID, these were some of the significant wine trends that we saw in the market. People were shopping for better for you. So there's a shift from heavier, high alcohol wines to light, refreshing, lighter style, low alcohol, like rosé, some sparkling, Pinot Grigio. Consumers were looking for very healthier options, and also considering better for the planet. So people want to buy products and brands that believe in their values, that have similar values to what they hold true for them. So is it better for the planet? Is it better for me? They're buying less, but drinking better. So that's that whole premiumization shift that I was talking to, where we saw people who were shifting their wallet spend up into the category and spending more on wine. A lot of packaging innovation in our marketplace with wines in cans, tetras, bag and box premium wines. This is still continuing to grow. It's a small but growing opportunity within our marketplace. And I think I mentioned this earlier, sparkling and rosé are both hot categories that continue to grow, and our liquor boards continue to devote a lot more time and attention to. And new continue to drive growth and traffic. So then what happened during COVID? Well, and we're still experiencing a bit of this now. Anything that was value priced was winning. Value was dominating the category. People were just shopping for, they didn't know what was going to happen, but we're starting to see that trend reverse. There's a bit of a shift now back to luxury, and we are seeing that people are treating themselves a lot more. Local became on fire. Everything where we had a local domestic industry, which is in Ontario and British Columbia, dominated. And there was a lot of support for our local industry, which still continues. They still continue to benefit from that. Anything that was old was new again. So there's a lot of people buying what's tried and true, because they'd go in, they'd shop with what they knew, and they'd leave very quickly. It was just a really important. So those brands that have been around for some time that were in decline suddenly saw that they were back and refreshed. And now the continuation of that is it's ongoing. So people are continuing to purchase those brands that they had left, and now they're back to. We saw e-commerce and online shopping just explode. Everybody was shopping online. They continue to do so. Our liquor monopolies that were smart about it made it very easy for the consumer. And I think that behavior is here to stay. We're seeing that people are shopping online, they're going into the liquor store, and they're actually having those cases of wine delivered into their trunk, and they're spending a lot more money. So that e-com shopper and that whole omni-commerce experience will continue to be an important development in our marketplace. Grocery was winning because if I'm going in to buy my groceries, it's now more convenient for me to just pick up wine while I'm there instead of having to make another trip. So that behavior is also continuing. And then bag and box, people were buying to fill their pantry because they didn't know when they'd next go back into a liquor store. So that continues as well. People have rediscovered the boxed wines. And I think we're starting to see a lot more opportunity for more premium priced boxed wines in our marketplace. So if I could sum up by saying, I think Canada is really been ranked, according to Wine Intelligence, as the second most profitable or opportunity market in the world. And Wine Intelligence is a group that regularly conducts monthly or annual studies in the Canadian marketplace and across the world. And that study just really says a lot about the importance of Canada as a market and for you to come in and look at an opportunity to grow your wine brands. So I'll just leave with that thought. For California wines, our theme is we're alive as a place that we're grown. Thank you for your time.
I think that the word I should use for your presentation is golden. Excellent remarks. This is very good insights for industry, for businesses who are not familiar with this market. And I think itself and really an excellent presentation. I'm going to ask everyone, if you have any questions for Danielle, we will have a Q&A session after Jan's presentation on spirits, but I do have one immediate question that someone wrote while you were speaking. They were curious about understanding better. They have a product around cooking wine and weren't sure if that was there was a market for that.
So a cooking wine would be in the grocery channel. It would have to be de-alcoholized, I believe, as well. It's certainly, I'm not sure the size of that market. It's just not something I have data on. But it would be worth talking perhaps to the agricultural equivalent up here for that government body to do an analysis, because that data should be available through AC Nielsen or other grocery retailers.
And I would think that most people just use everyday wine, normal wine for cooking.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I do, because to me, in my cooking, the better the wine, the better my dish tastes.
Agreed. Same here. Thanks, Danielle. Excellent work. I'm going to invite my colleagues to share Susana Valvo's video from Argentina. She's an IICA Goodwill Ambassador, and unfortunately she couldn't be with us live today, but so I'm going to ask my colleagues if they can put up her video right away. Thanks so much.
Buenos días.
Good morning. I'm Susana Valvo. I'm an enologist.
Susana Valvo Wines.
I'm the founder of Susana Valvo Wines. Today, we're going to talk about wine exports, but in particular, we're going to talk about the Canadian market. I'm engaged in high quality wine production and mainly export of wines. I export approximately 95% of my output to 34 countries, including Canada. The Canadian market is quite a particular market because since the prohibition or regulation of the sale of spirits in the US, Canada decided to adopt a monopoly system where the election, purchase, sale, and distribution of alcohol beverages is controlled. Wine, spirits, beer. This system has been commissioned to the different provinces. So there are consortiums or provincial monopolies. That is to say, each province has a board that decides which wines are going to be commercialized or marketing within that country. Say for Alberta, which in 1994 decided to privatize wine marketing. And so now it's in private hands. Going back to the monopoly system, in each province, there's a different monopoly, and there's a commercialization system basically based or divided into three segments. Number one, what we know as general listing. In general terms, we're talking about low price, large volume products. The second one is the market of specialities, specialties, or vintage beverages. And the third one is what we know somewhere else like as on-trade, which is supply to restaurants, hotels, and casinos. When we want to market a product and include it in a general list, the winery through an agent, because in order to be able to sell wine in Canada, you have to go through an agent which charges a predetermined commission for their services, and they have to present your product to the monopoly or to the board that you're trying to sell your product to. They need to fill out a form answering a series of questions mainly related to the quality of the product, the input or raw materials used for the production of that wine, if the wines are vegan, if they are produced using organic biodynamic grapes. So it's quite an extensive questionnaire, and in different monopolies, they act differently. Or there are different requirements for you to be listed. In Ontario, for example, first, they ask you to apply, and there's a category manager that decides whether they are going to be importing your product or not. If they say or decide that they want to list your product, what they do is ask for samples. Whereas in Quebec and British Columbia, together with your application for sale of wine to the monopoly, you need to attach your wine samples. These samples are assessed chemically, organoleptically, in general, through a committee, and the committee decides whether the product has sufficient quality to be included in the general list. As I said before, this general list is for high volume and mainly low price products. So it is recommended that only those wineries with high production capacity at low prices target this category. Then there's this second category, vintage or specialty wines. It's also a category where you need to go through an agent, but we're talking about higher quality, lower volume wines. Usually they are much more expensive. So these products are also subjected to wine tasting, to a call, because you may offer your product, but you need to wait until there's a request or a call by the monopoly saying that they are interested in buying a product of your characteristics as part of this specialty category or vintage category. And then there's a third category, which is what we know as the on-trade category: restaurants, hotels, and casinos. Usually they purchase wine directly from the monopoly or through an agent, or directly from the winery in the event of wine produced in Canada. They ask for lower prices so that they can add up their markups or contributions. One of the main things that we need to bear in mind when we are trying to sell in this market is that we need to calculate prices thoroughly. We have our own internal calculation in Argentina because we're far away, so there are high logistic costs. We are remotely located, but this is a very, very simple calculation. The price that the winery will get is approximately 25% of the price that you intend your product to be sold to the public. That is to say, if we're trying to sell a special wine at $10, in general, the price that we will get at the winery is $2.5 approximately, right? Maybe $3 if we are good negotiators. In general terms, in Canada, at least in the case of Argentina, they tend to buy CIF, that is to say cost, insurance, and freight. So we need to bear in mind when we calculate our price that we will need to pay freight, and also customs clearance costs. So this is embedded in the price, and we need to bear that in mind for the liquor board pricing. Approximately, the payment terms is 120 days. When we want to apply to sell to a Canadian monopoly, you need to be sufficiently prepared to hold your product at your seller for quite an extended time. Why so? Because committees get together 2 to 3 times per year. They do their wine tasting, they decide which is the product they are most interested in, and usually they make a decision probably 6 to 7 months after that. So from the moment you submit a sample and you are actually able to sell your product, a year goes by approximately, right? So we need to bear in mind that this is a product that can be stored, okay? So if you present this wine with a certain feature and certain analysis, you need to respect that when you are to deliver the product. We need to comply with all labeling standards, bottle weights. If we claim that our wine is organic, it has to be organic. There's a very thorough control in that sense in Canada. And something that is very important, wines that were listed can be delisted for a couple of reasons. One of them is if we do not comply with the marketing plan that we proposed. So when we propose a wine, we are committing ourselves to market the wine, engage in marketing strategies to have this wine sold. If there's no turnover for our wine, it will be delisted. Another option is that we deliver a wine that is not the one that we offered, so it will be delisted. Number 3, the winery is demanding for exaggerated price increases, and Canada is not willing to pay for that increase for the wine of our category. For example, Argentine category, Chilean category, Uruguayan category. It's divided in per country. And the last reason is that there are violations to international trade standards in terms of the presentation, labeling, copyrights or branding requirements. So our product is delisted. Well, there's a lot to say about this topic, but very briefly, I can tell you what we do as a winery. So usually we do not present our wines for general listing because we're talking about low price, large volume, and that's not our brand profile, right? So for us, quality is the most economic marketing strategy. So we tend to produce very high quality wines, and our quality plus is 35 to 40% vis-a-vis the price that we're charging for our product. How do we measure this? We carry out comparative wine testing against other products that are 35 to 40% more expensive than our wines. And our products need to be able to compete and to have similar qualities in these blind wine testings. In the case of Canada, there's the Liquor Control Board in Ontario. We have 2 products that are listed in a permanent category, vintage. One of them is Críos Torrontés. wine that has always exceeded expectations. It's a strategic product today, considered to be a strategic priority. So we do not need to go through quality control or wine tasting because it has been sold for many, many years in the market and it has had consistently good critiques. So we sell approximately 4,900 cases of 12 bottles per year. The other one is Susana Valvo Malbec, which has a very, very high quality. So it has been considered a contributive SKU because it contributes to promote the category given its quality and prestige. So we do not need to go through wine tasting. It has a spontaneous turnover and annual sales of approximately 1,500 to 2,000 cases per year. And then there are other products, for example, a barrel fermented Torrontés, a white blend, a Malbec Altamira, but these are specific sales or ones sale, and they may not be repeated again. So time is a tyrant. We do not have more time to speak about this, but I just wanted to say this to you about the Canadian market, which has its own specificities. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you are very successful in penetrating the Canadian market. It's very, very trustworthy. It has very high requirements and standards, but it's a wonderful market to sell at. So I wish you the best of success, and I'm willing to answer any questions that you may have about my presentation. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Susana is traveling, but we really appreciate her contributions as also a colleague through being a IICA Goodwill Ambassador. It's a pleasure working with you again, and great product here in the Canadian market. Over to spirits now, for a different category altogether. I'll pass the mic over to Jan Westcott, the CEO of Spirits Canada.
Thank you very much. Could we get the slide deck put up? That's great. Maybe go to the, perfect, thank you. Nope, go back. Good, thank you. So my name is Jan Westcott. I'm the President and CEO of Spirits Canada. We're just so there's no confusion. We're legal. Our legal name is the Association of Canadian Distillers, but for about 20 years we've operated under the brand name Spirits Canada. Just so that you see the two things, you won't be confused. I'm in my 24th year as this head of the spirits industry in Canada. I previously worked in the wine business for 7 years. I was the president of the Canadian Wine Institute, and then I spent 11 years in a major beer association looking after the interests of brewers. So while I speak on behalf of spirits, I'm pretty knowledgeable a little bit about most of the categories. So thank you for the opportunity to present to you today and speak to you and answer any questions you have. Go to the next slide, please. We are a national association dating back some 75 years. We represent both manufacturers and marketers of premium spirits. We act for domestic and imported member products. We account for about 85% of domestically produced spirits. Our forte of obviously is Canadian whiskey, but we also represent 2/3 of all of the spirits that are imported into Canada. So we have a robust coverage of the marketplace. We're headquartered in Toronto, which is in Ontario, more or less in the middle of Canada. We're a small organization. We have a staff of 4. We have 8 member companies and 7 large commercial distilleries across the country in different provinces. If you go to the next slide, please. So just a quick look at who our members are. Most of these names would be familiar to you. We represent largely global companies, although we are expanding at the moment to bring in some smaller producers, new distillers in Canada. We're seeing quite a growth in those. There's about 240 of them at the moment. We are already working together, but look forward to bringing them in as members. If we go to the next slide. We have some associate members. Some of these names will be familiar with you. Harm Walker and Sons, for example, operates a distillery in Ontario and is the single largest potable distillery operating in North America. So large operations. If we go to the next slide. The one company that was not listed up above was Pernod Ricard. Pernod Ricard owns a couple of businesses in Ontario, Harm Walker as well as Corby, and so we're pretty much represented across the whole spectrum of the global spirits industry. I'm going to take a minute on this slide, and I appreciate that some of what I am going to say has also been said by both Danielle and by Susana. So I'll just ask your indulgence and bear with me. Canada is a very big country. In fact, it's only slightly larger than the United States in physical size. But the United States, which many people are familiar with, has 329 million people. Canada, 35, 37, depending what census you look at. So the reason for talking about this is where to focus your effort. Clearly, as Danielle has pointed out, Ontario and Quebec and British Columbia are important markets. There's no question they have the bulk of the population. They are strong in certain categories and not really that much different in spirits. But as tempting as Ontario and Quebec are, as Susana noted, they can be difficult markets to penetrate for new products. And the reason I think Susana detailed this quite well is that it's tough to get into the general list. They do offer some other programs that you can go in on a one-time basis, vintages and different things in Quebec. But generally speaking, it's a time-consuming and very costly way to come into the Canadian market. And so I often get people asking me, I'd like to bring my product into Canada. Where should I go? What should I do? So as Danielle pointed out, you do need to have an agent. It's actually a legal requirement in Canada for you to have an official agent here. And without that, you will not have any success in dealing with the liquor boards. All imports, and I'll underline that, are brought into the country by individual provincial or territorial liquor boards. They are the importer. They are the entity that you will be selling to, and they control your entry and your volume and flow into the country. So getting back to where you want to focus your attention, I'm going to talk a little bit about Alberta and to a certain extent British Columbia. So Alberta is also has a liquor board, but in Alberta, all of the retail channel is privately owned and operated. What this means is that the government acts as the wholesaler, or the government liquor board acts as the wholesaler, but the actual people selling your product are private citizens, much like yourselves, with private businesses. And so what happens in Alberta is that they basically have an open listing system. If you would like to export your product to Alberta and sell your product in Alberta, it's very easy to get a listing with the government liquor board in Alberta. Virtually anybody can come in, assuming your product meets health and safety standards and it meets the necessary labeling standards. It's very easy and very quick to get a listing in Alberta. It's not the biggest market in Canada, but it's an important market. It's well over 4 million people. It's most of the population is concentrated in two major cities, Calgary and Edmonton. And so I remind people that no matter where you go into a new market, whether it's Canada or somewhere else, you do have to make investments in the market. You have to educate consumers about your products. You have to explain to them why they should try it, why it will be of interest to them, and you compete. And so there's an investment necessary. In Alberta, what happens is that you get your product listed, and then it's up to you to persuade retailers and on-premise accounts to buy your product and sell it to their customers. It's a much faster and a much easier process, a lot less time required. It does require investment, but your ability to come in and test Canadians' view of your products and acceptance of what you're selling is much more significant. And in fact, what I've seen many companies do is come into Canada through Alberta and build a base of their business, which they then take to other provinces, liquor boards in other provinces, and demonstrate that they are achieving success with Canadians. And if people in Alberta enjoy and patronize their products, there's no reasons why people in Ontario and Quebec may not do so as well. I'm just going to talk a little bit about spirits for a moment. As Danielle mentioned, or someone mentioned, in Quebec, beer and wine have been available to be sold in grocery stores and in convenience stores for about 40 years, a little over 40 years. And what that means is that beer and spirits are over-indexed in terms of sales in the Canadian, in the Quebec population. So just to give you an example, Quebec represents about 23% of the Canadian total population, yet only represents 11 or 12% of national spirit sales. Now that's a burden, but that's also an opportunity. And Quebec is somewhere that you should keep an eye on, because Quebec consumers are increasingly turning to spirits and enjoying spirits, and we're seeing good growth in the Quebec marketplace. The other point I would mention is that, as I think Danielle mentioned, the majority of Canadians live within 100 miles of the US border. And 52% of Canadians, 52%, so more than half of Canadians, live in 10 cities in the 4 largest provinces: Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, and Alberta. So while it's a very large country, your opportunity to get in front of people in these 10 cities, and 2 of those 10 cities, Edmonton and Calgary, are in Alberta, which is a good stepping off point. I think there have been some questions related. If I could go to the next slide, please. There have been some questions relating to data and information on the Canadian market. Since about the mid-1970s, Spirits Canada, in partnership with all of the Canadian liquor boards, has run a national sales statistics program. It started out in spirits, and after a number of years, we formed a relationship, a joint venture with the wine industry, and so it's now wine and spirits. A few years ago, beer was brought in, and as refreshments grew and cider grew, we included those. So we have comprehensive data on sales across the entire country. These are reported by SKU. So if you have a whiskey product and you're selling in a 750 ml bottle, it would be reported as the sales of that 750 ml bottle, or 375, or whatever the size would be. They are reported by province and by territory. The reports are issued monthly with previous year comparisons and rolling MAT, and we have comprehensive coverage with high data confidence, and the data is available by annual subscription. So I just mentioned that. That's my only commercial in this presentation. That may be of interest to some people, and my contact information will be available through Jean-Charles. So that exists there if you're looking for information on the marketplace in Canada. If we go to the next slide, please. I just want to give you a bit of a sense of where we are. We've all been through the pandemic. Hopefully we're on the cusp of coming out of it and returning to more normal times. So I'm just giving you a snapshot of first spirits and refreshments, then I'll touch on beer and wine. So as you can see, over the last 5 years, spirits has grown by just over 11%. We traditionally, in the business in Canada, grow on a volume basis by 1 to 2%. 2018 was not a bad year. 2019, a little softer. 2020, the first year of the pandemic, we saw pretty significant growth in the product. Partly this was a factor of rumors in some parts of the country that the government was not going to keep the liquor stores open. So in those cases, what happens is that consumers rush to the stores, buy a little more than usual, put them in the pantry, and then consume them because they're in the pantry. So there's a little bit more consumption. We had a bit of a fall off in 2021, but 2022 looks like we're going back to normal. So we've seen good growth in the spirits industry. As Danielle mentioned, the refreshment category, which is coolers and different kinds of refreshment beverages, the seltzers that she talked about, has seen remarkable growth, and even more so during the pandemic. Just phenomenal. Literally everybody's in the business: the spirits industry, the wine industry, the beer industry, Even cideries are now producing a range of seltzer type products. And as you can see, the change over 5 years on a volume basis has been very, very significant. And we expect that this is a category that's going to continue to grow, partly because of convenience, partly also just because of the many different flavor profiles that are coming forward and enticing consumers, particularly younger consumers. But I would say mostly it's a convenience factor of being able to open a package and consume it immediately with little activity required. If we go to the next slide, please. We're going to look at wine and beer. Wine has fared pretty well from a point of view of volume. Not sure exactly what was happening in 2019, but 2020, the first year of the pandemic, was quite strong for the wine industry. A little bit of fall off like spirits, but overall over the last 5 years, overall volumes in wine are up almost 3%. Beer, on the other hand, has struggled over the last number of years, both in Canada and in the United States, and we're seeing that trend continue. There was some positive impact in 2020 during the pandemic, but again, they're back to the sort of pattern that they were seeing prior to the pandemic of a 4 to 5% decline annually in the business. And over the last 5 years, beer has suffered. Part of the wine and beer issue has been linked to malt and grape-based coolers. It's provided some relief in some cases, but not enough to offset in the case of beer as they're going forward. So just a quick look at the marketplace. A quick look at the marketplace. I would say one final thing before I close. Canada is a country, and its customers, its consumers, its citizens are very interested in products from other countries. There's no question. We receive those with great enthusiasm. There is an interest in trying new products. I think, as Susana said, there is definitely a continuing skew to premiumization. So if you can put a proposition in front of a Canadian consumer that the product is a little higher quality, they will step up and pay that price. But we are very interested in products from other countries, products that are unique and authentic. And so I encourage people to look at Canada as a place to begin to sell your products. We're quite welcoming in terms of foreign products. In the spirits business in Canada, 75% of what we make inside Canada leaves Canada. So it's a two-way street. We're very significant exporters, but we're also very interested in spirits products from other countries. I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions that people might have. Thank you.
Excellent presentation, John. I love data, and I think it gives the listeners a good perspective of the current market. And you have immediate interest in the chat in terms of any additional details on rum and whiskey that you may have.
So yes, we cover everything. So we cover all of the traditional spirits categories, whiskey, vodka, rum, gin, liqueurs, you name it, all refreshment beverages, and all wine. And I can't say that we are 100% of beer across the country, but we're pretty close. Certainly all imported beer, and pretty much 100% of all other categories as well. The data does include things like tequila, things like mezcal, different unique spirits from different parts of the world. So Ontario and Quebec are leading purchasers of beverage alcohol from across the world. And so even though there are products out there that some might consider to be extremely niche, they are selling in Canada. So you know, whether it's from Asia, whether it's from the Middle East, certainly from Europe, South America, there is a wide range of product choices for consumers in Canada.
Excellent. There's another question immediately regarding Pisco from Peru.
Yes, we track Pisco sales for sure. They are small, but they're growing. And I think part of the reason for the growth is that in the last few years, the quality of the Pisco coming from South America has, we've seen dramatic improvements. And as I said, consumers are responding very well to that.
And one thing we could do a whole show on the innovations in the sector. Fantastic. Even in Canada, I heard that there's Vodka.
Yeah, yes. We have a small distillery called the Dairy Distillery that is taking milk and fermenting it and making a vodka out of it. And I have not tasted it, but a friend of mine tasted it, said it's actually very good. So it's a increasingly well known, and I think that's the king. Consumers are looking for interesting and, as I said, authentic products, and many of the small producers in different parts of the world are making very interesting things. There's a lot of innovation take place, and they're very authentic, and that's a critically important factor for consumers. They're looking for that authenticity in the products that they consume. I think Danielle was correct in saying that they're looking for a reason to believe in your product. It could be environmental, it could be because you're doing good work economically, but certainly authenticity and reflecting your local circumstances and the heritage of where the product is being made, the provenance, is critically important.
Do we have your permission you can submit your contact information directly in the chat. There's some questions people would like to reach out to you both. So
yes, by all means. I will post my email address in the chat for people. That works.
Someone was asking about non-alcoholic or low alcoholic beverages and wine. And yes, it's a growing market here because it's following that whole better for you trend and a healthier lifestyle that we're seeing. So it is a growing category. It's small, but growing. And in fact, some of our liquor monopolies are actually putting calls out for low alcohol or no alcohol. And if you look at the LCBO websites right now, you'll actually find that they're promoting better for you.
Okay, you have Jan's
See it?
contact information. Yep, it's in the chat now. Thanks.
Good, thank you.
We have about a minute left. Feel free if there's a chat question you'd like to answer. I think there's one from the Caribbean. Local grapes. I mean, yes.
I would say yes if the product tastes good and it's priced properly. I see no reason why there wouldn't be some interest in trying. We have a very large diaspora from the Caribbean in Canada, and there is a strong market for products from the Caribbean up here for sure.
And also many more Canadians travel.
Yes.
And have discovered these flavors and want to continue experiencing those flavors back home. So one last question then, I'll take it from, it's about Mezcal again, from Lucia Melo, for you, John.
So Mezcal is being sold in Canada. It's increasing in popularity. I would say they're not a large range of brands up here yet, but it's increasing. It's a little bit more popular, a little bit more prevalent in Western Canada, in Alberta and British Columbia than it is in Eastern Canada, but it's growing, that's for sure. And we actually just had a conversation yesterday about better tracking between tequila and mezcal, so that we understand sort of some of the differences. So we are looking at that for sure.
Excellent presentations. I'm sorry that time is short. This has been very interesting. And on IICA's behalf, my thanks to everyone for participating today. My thanks to the speakers, excellent presentations. My thanks to our interpreters, good work. I've been listening into all languages, excellent. And I'd like to invite our partner GRULA to the Ambassador Martin Vidal to say a word of closing.
Just to follow up on what you say, Jean-Charles, has been excellent, mind opener. I've been here a while, but I didn't know some of the things that were said. It was surprising to see the size of the Quebec market, even though it's half of Ontario, they consume even more. And given the proximity, not only from Ottawa, but the cultural proximity with this province is something that at least in our case, in my opinion, we should take more into account. This is something that was news for me. Has all the three presenters have provided a useful angle for us here and our supporters at home. So I really thank you. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I really hope that we continue to do this with other sectors for the benefit of our economies and our producers. Muchas gracias. Merci beaucoup, mon ami.
Avec plaisir. Stay safe, everybody. Drink responsibly. And we'll make an effort to put this presentation up on our IICA Canada webpage. Take care.
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Have a lovely weekend.
You too.